Let's be honest with ourselves. Some plants are just not worth the time, energy, money, or your sanity. So in today's video, I'm gonna be sharing with you 5 plants that I think are absolutely not worth it. Now, of course, these are all my own opinions, but I would love to hear from you. Whether you disagree or agree with me, definitely chime down below in the comments. And without further ado, let's get started with the first plant on my list. And it's a plant that I wanna love. It's a plant I already talked about in the past, and it is gonna be the Philodendron Spiritus Sancti. Now, before I say anything about this plant, I just want to say that I love the name of this plant. I think it's probably one of the coolest plant names out there, but I just don't think it fits the vibe of that plant. In my opinion, the Spiritus Sancti is just boring. There, I said it. I think it's boring, and I don't understand the hype behind that plant. I get it that at one point it was super rare and it was a collector's item and it was super hard to obtain. But now they're super cheap and widely available. You can get them pretty easily for like $20, $30, $40. And I just am not a fan. I'm not a fan. And I was even less of a fan back when they costed like hundreds and thousands of dollars, because I just cannot imagine why you would pay so much money for a plant that is so mediocre. That plant, in my opinion, is the most basic plant out there. I kind of understand the appeal. The lance-shaped leaves, this kind of silveriness, even though in most photos that I am seeing of this plant, and whenever I saw it like in person, it doesn't even look that silver, especially like the new TC cultured ones. They just have that basic, boring green color. And then the shape of it is just like, it's all right, I suppose, but I think there are way cooler and better plants that have that similar elongated leaf shape. The first plant that comes to my mind is the Philodendron Patriciae. Now, granted, it's not the same shape, but it's that elongated shape that I think people are really yearning for. And I think that the Patriciae is a lot more interesting, a lot more fun to grow, and it just looks a little bit better, in my opinion. And my biggest issue, my number one gripe with the Spiritus Sancti is just its growth pattern and its wingspan. That plant takes up way too much space. You have no right to take up so much space and look so freaking boring. I do not understand the hype behind that plant. I never understood it. And I never grew one. I would be perhaps interested in trying it just to see maybe if I actually owned the plant, I would change my mind. But as it stands right now, I just am not interested in that plant whatsoever because I don't have the space for it. If you have the space to accommodate such a large plant and you want to try it, by all means, but I just don't have that luxury. So the Spiritus Sancti is definitely not a plant that I'm going to be growing, and it's not a plant that I'm yearning for. Again, I think there are just way cooler and better plants out there than the Spiritus Sancti, and even now that it is a lot cheaper, I'm just really not that interested in it. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that that plant is quite a slow grower. Again, I could be wrong. I'm not certain, but I'm probably never gonna find out because I just do not care to grow that plant. And I feel like the reason why it's so popular is just because of social media and because it was so hyped online, especially like during COVID times. And nowadays, I don't really even see people talking about that plant. And I think it's for a reason. And that reason being that it's just not as remarkable as we may have thought. I believe that there is a variegated variety out there, which honestly looks even worse to me. So I'm going to be steering clear of the Spiritus Sancti, and I recommend you do the same. If I wanted something that had a similar growth pattern, I think I would just rather get like a billietier, if I'm being honest. But the Spirit of Sancti, it's a no from me, dog. The next plant that we're going to be talking about is going to be a Monstera. And I think this Monstera is universally hated in the community, and that is the Monstera obliqua Peru. My God, I cannot stand that plant. And the reason why I can't stand it is because of the runners. This plant has such a high tendency to just run and run and run and run. And unless you're growing that plant on a moss pole, good luck. And unless you're growing it in really good conditions, meaning lots of light, lots of humidity, I think you're going to have a really difficult time with that plant. And I don't think it's a plant that I would recommend to anybody. I would consider myself a advanced to intermediate grower, and I'm still staying clear from the Monstera obliqua Peru. A lot of us love fenestrated plants. I love fenestrated plants. But there's a line. And I feel like the Monstera obliqua Peru just crosses that line a little bit too much. Because when you're paying money for a plant that is more whole than plant, I don't know. The math doesn't add up. And because there is so little of the actual plant, it tends to look sickly, it tends to brown, yellow, and it's just not a cute look. And that paired with the fact that it's such a difficult plant to grow, that it throws up runners all the time, that it's hard to size up, No. I think this is just one of those plants that we can admire from afar. We can just leave in the rainforest and let it do its thing. But that plant is not coming inside of my house, which is unfortunate because I do love me a good Monstera, but that plant is not a good Monstera. Now, again, these have definitely become a lot more available, but I really don't see anybody growing them or talking about them, and I think that's for a good reason, and I think it should stay that way because that plant, it's just not giving what it ought to be gave. The next plant that I'm gonna be talking about is a plant that actually a lot of people love, to my surprise, and that is gonna be the Alocasia Jacqueline. I get it to an extent. It's a very cool shape. It's very unique. It has those like hook-like hairs. Cool in theory, but in practice, that plant is such a nightmare. First things, it's an absolute pest magnet. Obviously, it's an alocasia, so spider mites will eat it up, literally. And on top of that, you have that texture, which is cool, but it's also a pain in the ass when it comes to actually treating the plant. And another thing that I absolutely hate about the Alocasia Jacqueline, and this goes for a lot of alocasias that have this sort of growth pattern, and it's the long petioles. I cannot stand long petioles on any type of plant, but on alocasias in particular, they just drive me insane because those plants tend to only have like 1, 2, maybe 3 leaves at a time. And then when you pair that with those long ass stems, I just think it looks awkward, unproportionate, and weird. And it just takes up way too much space. Way too much space. If the Alocasia Jacqueline was a dwarf variety, maybe I would be more keen on owning it, but as it is, I just do not find that plant appealing. And also, I don't know if it has a tendency to bleach or what, but in a lot of the pictures and examples and specimens I saw online, they look kind of yellowish, and it just gives me the ick. It just looks a little bit sick and unhealthy, and I'm not here for it. And because it grows so tall and unproportionate, I would have a really difficult time finding a spot for that plant in my space because it doesn't fit on my video shelf. It wouldn't fit on my windowsill. Like the only place that I could really logistically put it is on the floor. And something about me is that I absolutely hate when I have plants on the floor. I don't know why, it just drives me insane. I need to have my plants at least kind of like console table level or higher. I don't know, whenever I see a plant on the floor, unless it's like a huge statement plant, I just think it looks kind of ugly, and I feel like a lot of people are keeping their Jacquelines on the floor. I just don't like that look. And I get that the shape is cool, but to me, again, it's just not that appealing. And I've also heard that it can be quite a finicky plant and that a lot of people struggle with this plant. So the Alocasia Jacqueline is just one that I'm not interested in owning, that I will probably never own. And if somebody asks me whether they should get a Jacqueline or not, I would honestly just say no. But I do know that the Jacqueline is a very popular plant, and I'm sure that a lot of you guys either own a Jacqueline or love the Jacqueline, and that's completely fine. We are allowed to have different tastes, but the Jacqueline, not for me. Absolutely not for me. Next up, we're going to be talking about another plant that loves to run and grow like shit. And that is going to be the Epipremnum pinnatum skeleton key. This was another plant that was so hyped back in the day, and I never understood the hype around that plant. I can see how a lot of people love the shape of those matured leaves. However, getting that plant to maturity is such a pain in the ass. And until you grow it into a mature specimen, which requires the moss pole, it requires really good light, it probably requires good humidity as well, you're stuck with just the most basic, boring green leaves. It's not a look I'm here for. It really isn't a look I am here for. Now, I love Epipremnums. I love Pophosis. I think they're fabulous. I think they're so easy care. And there are so many varieties out there. There are so many cool varieties that you can grow climbing up a moss pole, like the Manjula Pophos, the Marble Queen, the Cebu Blue, the Epipremnum pinnatum albo. All of those are such amazing choices for a moss pole. So I do not get why you would grow the skeleton key. Even if you manage to achieve that mature leaf shape, in my opinion, it's kind of meh. It's kind of boring. It kind of looks just deficient. It looks like part of the leaf is missing, and I personally just do not see the appeal of that plant. And I know that I would absolutely hate the growing experience of that plant. So I'm probably never gonna have a Epipremnum pinnatum skeleton key in my collection. And this is another one that has been so hyped back in the day. Everybody wanted this plant. And nowadays, I literally don't see any single person growing or even talking about this plant, which says a lot. And again, I think it's just because it's not worth it. It's not worth your time, your energy, or your patience. I think there are just way cooler plants out there that you can grow and that have a similar appeal or look to that plant. So if you're really looking for that kind of skeletal, stingray look, I think there are other plants that give off that same vibe that are maybe a little bit more interesting. But as for me, I'm gonna say no to the Epipremnum pinnatum skeleton key. And last, but certainly not least, we have a plant that I would never ever own, and that is gonna be the Monstera adansonii variegated. The hype around this plant is still quite big, but I just do not get it. I love Monsteras, I love variegated plants, but that plant is just such a mess. Whenever I would see a specimen of this plant, it would look just so sickly and unhealthy because of the amount of holes. And then with that variegation, I I am not a fan. I used to have a regular Adansonii, and surprisingly enough, I've had quite a lot of struggles with that plant. The leaves always looked sort of bleached and unhealthy, and it was also a huge thrips magnet. And to top it all off, the variegated variety has a huge tendency to revert. It will either go all white or all green. Every single person that is growing this plant complains about the fact that it has at least once reverted and gone either all green or all white. If it goes all green, well, you kind of just paid for a basic Adansonii, and if it goes all white, well, then you basically have a dead plant because white variegation cannot produce chlorophyll, meaning that the plant can produce energy for itself, meaning that it is dead. So for that reason, I just don't want to add that plant into my collection. And a hot take, I don't think I'm even a fan of the original Adansonii. Now, I do like it when people grow these up moss poles and they get big and look healthy, but personally, I was never able to do that, and I don't know. Sometimes I do be tempted to get another one, but then I just remind myself of how much of a pain and struggle that plant was to grow, and I lose all interest. So the variegated variety is definitely not one that I'm gonna be getting. And I don't think I would recommend that plant to anybody out there. I don't think it's worth it. I really don't think it's worth it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen a lot of people actually manage to grow a variegated Adansonii to like a big, beautiful, healthy size. I feel like they have a tendency to stay quite small, even when grown up a moss pole. But again, if you know somebody that has grown a beautiful Monstera or variegated Monstera Adansonii, definitely let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's gonna be my list. I just wanted to make a short, sweet video talking about some plants that I do not think are worth the effort. Do let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me, and if you have any other plants that you think are not worth the effort. I can't wait to hear from you. And I hope you have a super amazing, fabulous, gorgeous day. We are currently in the midst of a heat wave over here in Croatia, so if it's hot where you're at, please don't forget to wear sunscreen, hydrate a lot, and stay away from the sun. I love you all so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye!